Mercedes S55 AMG ABC hydraulic pulsation damper replacement. First, drive the car up on ramps and remove the plastic covers on the bottom. Once the pulsation damper goes bad, when you start the car and up to 2000 RPM, you can hear like a whining sound, which is hydraulic vibration because the damper isn't working anymore. I will show you that. Hopefully the camera picks up the sound when I start the car. Mine is obviously bad because it's leaking oil from one of the welds. Start the car so you can hear what the whining sound sounds like. I'll also put the camera by the front right corner of the car and rev it up some so you can hear it. I'll rev it up to like 2000 RPM so you can hear it the most. Car is on ramps and the plastic cover is removed. You do not need to take the front one off that covers the oil pan, just the one that covers the gearbox. So this one, you can see the scale of the oil leak. Obviously it's much worse on this side. That's where the pulsation damper is, right here. Show you what it looks like underneath. Now these cars was ABC suspension or Ermatic air suspension. Even if you have the car on ramps, if you're getting under the car, always support it with jack stands somewhere like on the frame right here, so if something would happen to the suspension and the car would collapse, the jack stands will catch it and the car won't come down and crush you. Again, very unlikely, but if it happens, then it's very bad, especially if you're under the car and it comes down on you. So I always put jack stands in a safe place. If the car falls, it just falls on the stands and it'll be okay. Here's the hydraulic hoses and pipes. The gearbox right there. This is the pulsation damper that we're replacing. As you can tell right there, it's dripping. Now this is a very interesting failure because when I first saw this leak, there was some hydraulic fluid sprayed in a wheel liner, and I firstly thought it was actually, if you can see the hose, that hose right there, leaking. I inspected everything and I admit it's not very clean, but it's not leaking. It's actually the pulsation damper itself leaking. Look right here in the end, you can see like a weld right there, the thing that sticks out. There's a micro crack in that and it's leaking hydraulic oil. So obviously this is bad. All the 200 bar or so of nitrogen has escaped. The diaphragm has ruptured and there's micro crack in the weld right there and it's leaking hydraulic oil. So now drive the car off jack stands and remove front right wheel. Car is on ramps and the bottom plastic cover is removed. There's no need to remove the front cover, just the back one that covers the gearbox. You can see the scale of the oil leak. Obviously much worse on the side, that's where the pulsation damper is. It's just 8mm bolts like these. This is what underneath the car looks like. Now these cars with ABC suspension or Ermatic, if the car is on the ramps and you're going under it, always support it in a place like right there on the frame, so if there's the very unlikely event of some failure in the system and the car would fall down, it will be caught by the jack stands and it will not come down and crush you. You can see some of the hydraulic pipes. This is the Pulsation damper right there that we're replacing. Now it's a very interesting failure because at first when I noticed this, there's some hydraulic oil straight in the wheel liner, and I thought at first it was that hose right there leaking, and I inspected it. I mean, I admit everything's quite dirty, but it's not leaking. If you look here, the Pulsation damper itself, there's like a weld right there on the end, and there is a micro crack in that, and it's leaking hydraulic oil. So obviously the 200 bar or so of nitrogen is gone, and the rubber diaphragm has ruptured. And there is micro crack in the mold itself, and you can see the hydraulic oil leaking out. So the next step is drive the car back off the ramps and remove the front right wheel. The front right wheel is removed. The car is on jack stand. Here's a better view of the Pulsation damper. Here you can see exactly where it's leaking from. There's a micro crack in that weld. And I just let the car sit for about 20 minutes and depressurize. Now there is no need to worry that when you unscrew the Pulsation damper that the hydraulic pressure will be lost and the suspension will collapse, because this is only on the return pressure, and all the shocks and everything are connected through the valve locks, and when the car is off, the locking valves are engaged, so they're locked out. So if you disconnect that, it doesn't matter at all, there should be any pressure in it. But different story if you disconnect one of the hydraulic pipes, let's say this one here that goes from the valve lock to the front right strut. Now if the weight of the car would be sitting on this wheel, and you would disconnect this hydraulic pipe or undo the bleeding valve, and the hydraulic fluid pressure would be lost, then yes, this corner would collapse. But this does not matter because this is on the return pressure side. Now while waiting for the system to depressurize, I'll show you how to remove the Pulsation damper itself. The nut is 24mm. But as you can see, as the wrench goes on, the whole assembly and the valve and everything is mounted on rubber mounts. And if you just try to unscrew it like this, so see the whole thing is flexing. Do not do this because you'll break the hydraulic pipes or the mount. The way to get this off is a 24mm wrench, an adjustable wrench, and put this wrench in through here on the flat part between the two hydraulic pipes. Now while holding it down with the adjustable wrench right here, you can safely unscrew this. Also very important before unscrewing it to clean it really well and blow it off with compressed air so there is no junk or anything, because it's one of the main problems with ABC suspension systems is when people service them or something, they do not clean them properly and small bits of junk fall inside the system and unclog valve blocks and stuff and so on, and you get various ABC codes because of it. Also, one more thing, there is a nut which you can see right here. Do not put a wrench right there to hold this in place when trying to unscrew this. That is another valve. If you do so, you risk unscrewing it or breaking it. Just hold it right here. Much better. This is the new Pulsation damper, the Mercedes Benz. You can see it's the W220 chassis. So if you have different Mercedes like CL55 or SL55 AMG, check to make sure the Pulsation damper is the same, because it could be different. This is for the 220 chassis. So what it looks like on the end. Do not remove the white plastic piece. That is part of the Pulsation damper. If you remove it, you will ruin it. Just put some Pentosan hydraulic oil on the threads and the O-ring. So right there, you got the Mercedes symbol on 220 for the 220 chassis. Just pressurize the 200 bar. This is the welder on the old one it's leaking from. and the pulsation damper is loosened. You can see the adjustable wrench on the valve block right there, and the 24mm. I just put it on right here like so. You squeeze both of them together, and that loosens the pulsation damper. It is normal thread, so turn it left to loosen it. This one wasn't not very tight, some of them are. Shouldn't be very much fluid that comes out. This is what the old one looks like. Here is the new pulsation damper. I already lubricated the threads and O-rings with new Pulsation hydraulic oil. Now this will simply just thread in. The new pulsation damper is fully tightened. So that is that done. Now I just put the wheel on and start the car. This is the old one. Now, since this one is leaking from the weld right there, theoretically the diaphragm should be ruptured and this whole thing should be full of oil. Some oil came out, most of it is still stuck inside. You can hear it slushing about as you shake it. So yes, this is completely failed. The wheel is on. I already checked the hydraulic fluid level, the dipstick right there, and as well as the power steering. The level is good for now. You have to start the car and bleed the system. There shouldn't be much air in the system because when I removed the pulsation damper, only about 10 milliliters of Pulsation came out, and it's also on the return side, so even if there is some air, it'll quickly work its way out. Now, to bleed the system, if you do not have the Star 3 diagnostic computer, if you do not have that, just raise and lower the car about 15 or 30 times until it all gets worked out. I do have the diagnostic system, but I prefer doing it this way rather than using the Star 3 diagnostic to actuate all of the struts, because that actually puts quite a lot of stress on the system. And when the system gets old, if you do the program to cycle all the struts, some other part could fail in the system, so this is much easier on the system. Now also, since this is on the return side, after all the power steering, after all the struts and everything, I'm going to start the car, let it run for a little bit, so if there's some air it'll work its way out, and only then cycle the system up and down a couple times. Now to cycle the suspension up and down. This is how many miles this car has, 186,700. That would be slightly over 300,000 kilometers. Here's underneath where the pulsation damper is. As you can see, no leaks, everything is dry. And there's to put the plastic cover on. Take the car off the ramps and that's it. Now the car is much quieter with the new pulsation damper. There's less hydraulic whining sound. Just the camera down here and then I'll rev it up to 2000 RPM so you can hear it better. So the car is completely done. I put all the plastic covers back on the bottom. Runs and drives, no problems, no ABC warnings on the dash. No leaks. I did have to add about half liter of Pulsation CH11S. This is because of the leak. Mind you, when I removed the pulsation damper only about 10 milliliters came out, so I do not have to add any to the power steering, which is right there. This is through the suspension. There are two markings on the dipstick, a top mark and bottom mark. Right there. There's some writing in German on the dipstick itself. I did not know what it says, but what the two marks are for, the top one is for when the car is off, and the bottom one is for when the car is running. When the car is running and all the components are working properly, the accumulators, if they are still good, they fill up with fluid. This is why the fluid level goes down. Now if you do not know if your accumulators are still good, an easy way to check is check the fluid level with the car off and check the fluid level with the car running. If the fluid level does not go down when you start the car, the accumulators are bad. Overall, the car drives much better. There's a significant difference in the way the ride feels when you drive it over bumps, and as well as the hydraulic whining sound is much quieter. Hopefully the camera picked it up, because that's why I put the camera down here for and revved it up to 2000 RPM so the best place you can hear it. So this is really all I have for this video, and thank you for watching.